opportunity. Well, good morning again, everybody. Almost afternoon. So good to be with you all. Happy anniversary. Happy birthday again, CSC. It's warm up in here. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. We were told the heat wasn't working, so it's a beautiful thing. See? Yes, we bring the heat, absolutely. So I want to get into the message because I have some things to share with you all today. This is the final week of our series, The Inside Joke. And we started in week 1 with Okay, I'm Not Playing. In week 2, Childish Games. And in week 3, I Receive What I Give. Last week, How Metaphysicians Break the Rules. And we're going to talk a little bit about, go back to what we've talked about over the past 4 weeks as it relates to today. But I want to start here. I was thinking about our upcoming election. Can you believe it? We're going to be electing the president again next year, right? Yes, we believe a new president. And it's an unprecedented time. It feels like the election cycle has started much earlier than it usually does. We currently have on the Democratic side 15 women and men running for the nomination for the Democratic nomination for president. And what's so beautiful and unprecedented in this year is that we have 6 of those 15 candidates are women. You've heard me say it here before, but I firmly believe that our next president needs to be a woman. That's my personal belief. And, if we look at for instance, New Zealand, and we're looking at the powerful leadership of their prime minister, I don't know why we in this country don't understand that a woman can lead powerfully, compassionately, and deliberately. And I look forward to seeing that in my lifetime. And so as we're considering and thinking about the Democratic candidates and looking at all of the different things that they're talking about, there's some issues that are coming up constantly, right? They're focusing on healthcare and potentially the conversation around universal healthcare. There's conversations about income inequality and moving us to income equality. There's conversations about immigration. There's, of course, a beautiful and necessary conversation around our criminal justice system and related to that, legalizing marijuana, but recognizing that it's understanding how our criminal justice system is affecting black and brown people particularly, and the discrepancies that are there, and they must be overhauled. And, of course, there's climate change. And so thinking about climate change, of course, the big buzzword that everybody's thinking about and talking about is the Green New Deal. And as I've been doing my own thinking and studying and research on the Green New Deal, and as I'm an advocate of this proposal and the set of goals, I was recently introduced to a progressive think tank called New Consensus. I was actually watching an interview on Democracy Now! With a sister, Rihanna Gunn Wright, and she was offering some wonderful ideas, but the think tank, New Consensus, on their website it says this: they work to develop and promote the Green New Deal, a World War II scale mobilization to fix America's greatest problems. We have advised progressive leaders and organizations, including Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Justice Democrats, which of course includes people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, and the Sunrise Movement. If you've been seeing the high school kids that are skipping school and protesting, that's the Sunrise Movement, on the issues and mechanics that will be involved in a sweeping economic mobilization to build a clean and just economy. And one of the things that I love about the work that they're doing and the way that they talk about their work, again, the name of the organization is New Consensus. And so they juxtapose this idea of what the old consensus is or was and what the new consensus must be. And as I read that, it began to spur my spiritual imagination, because we talk about this often, this idea of getting rid of our old consciousness and developing a new consciousness, right? And so instead of using consciousness today, I want to talk about consensus. And so what would be our new consensus? Now, first of all, let's just look at the definition of the word according to Webster's. Consensus is general agreement. It's the judgment arrived at by most of those concerned. The consensus was to go ahead, right? And when we look at the word consensus, the root, and the English root, is consent. And so to consent to something, we're approving it, we're agreeing with it, we're expressing unanimity, we're in unison with it. And I like that unison is a word that's related to this and even a synonym that we find in the dictionary, because unison means we are of one mind, right? Single-minded, and that brings us into the idea of focus. So our question today then, as we've gone through this journey of the 4 weeks, what is our new consensus? What are we approving? What are we in agreement with? What are we one-minded about? What are we single-minded about? What are we focused on? What are we keeping our mind on, as we just sung about? And so in the description for the series this month, we wrote this: as we play the game of life, we eventually discover that there are rules we agree to that can be broken, lies we believe that must be discarded, and agreements we've made that must be renegotiated. This month, we will learn how to break those rules, stop believing those lies, and renegotiate new terms for our time here on planet Earth. We're all in on the biggest cosmic joke ever told, but it's only funny when you know how to win the game. And so being in on the joke and knowing how to win the game of life requires a new consensus. It requires a new spiritual worldview. And when I thought about that idea of a new spiritual worldview, it took me to a text that we're using right now in 90 Days to Greatness in Master Manifester, E Cubed by Pam Grout. Now, many of you are probably familiar with her first book. Both of them are New York Times bestsellers. Her first book, E Squared, 9 Experiments That Prove That Your Thought Creates Your Reality. In E Cubed, she takes it a step further. And in the first 2 chapters, she lays down really the premise for the whole book. If you don't read anything else, if you go out and get the book, just read the first 2 chapters. That's what we're going to deal with a little bit today. And in those first 2 chapters, she outlines what she calls Worldview 2.0. Right? She says that there was an old consensus, there's an old way of thinking about it, Worldview 1.0, that we need to get rid of. It's the worldview that has created the problems of our society. It's the worldview that's created inequality. It's the worldview that's created injustice. It's the worldview that has us thinking that life is happening to us, that we're victims of society, and that we're powerless. But in Worldview 2.0, she says and she writes that there are 2 main principles that undergird Worldview 2.0. And these 2 principles are the things that we've been talking about throughout the previous 4 weeks. 1, the energetic world, the world you see, the world you can't see, touch, taste, or smell, is the foundation of which all exists. 2, everybody gets a happy ending. Everything that we've been talking about all month really rests on these 2 principles. Now, last week I talked about the field. I talked about this energetic field that we're all connected to. I said you could go and read Lynn McTaggart, or you could read Dean Radin or other folks, the Field Paradigm, which is a book that I quoted from last week. There's this field that connects us, responds to us, and there are programmed universal laws and principles that this field and the laws by which this field is governed, as Pam Grout writes in this text, was discovered by scientists maybe 100 years ago. She says about a century ago. This idea of there being a matrix, a unified field. It's called by many names, but quantum scientists, or physicists rather, are in agreement that this field exists and that it responds to us. And it responds to our thought, the vibration of our thought. And so as it was discovered about a century ago, she goes on and she says, most of us, 100 years later, are still focused on the material world, which is a little like rooting for Wile E. Coyote. Despite all his elaborate schemes and complex contraptions, that sorry old coyote is never going to catch the roadrunner. And our stubbornness, beep, beep, in believing that the cut and dried machine-like world is the be-all, end-all, keeps us in spiritual diapers. Now, you see how this all relates to what we've been talking about the entire month, because we talked about this idea of childish games, right? That when we're believing anything other than what is true, when we're believing the old consensus, A Course in Miracles teaches us that it's like being a child who needs to go to sleep. They start running a temper tantrum, and you know it's time for them to go to bed. In spiritual diapers. But what's interesting, I love, and I invite you to go on YouTube, and for those who may not have seen those cartoons, the Looney Tunes, because I don't know if they're on as much as they were when I was a kid. Go watch Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, because it's a beautiful metaphor for what we're doing in our lives as we try to manipulate life. His elaborate schemes and complex contraptions that sorry old coyote is never going to catch the Roadrunner. All these years, he ain't never caught the Roadrunner, and he never will, and we know that. But he continues to devise schemes. He continues to do things. But what does that look like in our lives? We continue to read more books. We keep continuing to try to amass more information. We keep trying to manipulate life, because if I can just build the right contraption, if I can set the right trap for the universe, then the universe will bless me. If I can set the right trap for God, then God will show up in my life. If I can set the right trap with the right series of affirmations, then God will show up. But we never catch the Roadrunner. Because the setup is based on this premise that we don't understand that, first of all, the world that we can't see, taste, touch, and smell is the foundation of all that exists. So if we're going to make any change in our life, we have to go to the non-physical. We have to go to the mental. And then also knowing that everybody gets a happy ending. Things are always working out for us. At the end of the story, you win. And she goes on, she writes, she says, no matter how it may appear to the naked eye, life in its pure, unadulterated form, without our life sucks and then you die consciousness laid over it, is a bubbling cauldron of possibility composed of pure, perfect love. That's the truth of life right there. And it's interesting to me because that reminds me of what what we talked about in week one when I quoted Ernest Holmes, right? Where Ernest Holmes writes that our ignorance has erected a worldview based Pam Grout says this echoes Ernest Holmes, where she goes on and she says, our ignorance has erected a worldview based solely on problems, on fear, on protecting ourselves from all the things that could go wrong. The dominant life sucks and then you die paradigm is nothing but a fictional story, a made-up pack of lives we've been telling ourselves for the last, 40,000 years. And we echoed the very same thing in week one, where Ernest Holmes teaches us that it's only because of our ignorance, it's through our ignorance that we believe that suffering is God ordained. It's not. How do we know that? Because everybody gets a happy ending, and the energetic world that you can't see, taste, touch, or smell is a foundation on which all rests, on which all exists. And then as we go further through the chapter, she sums up the two main principles in this way, just saying it another way. She says, the way I see it, there are just two things we need to know. The universe has our back, and everything is going to turn out okay. That's just 12 words, y'all. If you have a pen, write it down. The universe has our back. Everything is going to turn out okay. 12 words. When you find yourself in worry, doubt, and fear, and you're looking at that bank account balance and you want to go into your oh Lord moment, you come back to your right mind and say, wait, the universe has my back and everything is going to turn out okay. Now, I may not be able to see it, but the world that I see, I taste, I touch, I smell is not the power, is not the cause. I got to go to where I can't see because that's where I create from. And that's just 12 words. The universe has my back. Everything is going to turn out okay. So I want to just bring us back to what we talked about in each week as we relate back to these two principles, which are simple. Because the thought is, as I was working on this message, like, well, Pastor Greg, why don't you just say that in the first week? It was just 12 words. Why don't you just give us the 12 words in the first week, right? But we needed to develop this foundation. But let's go back and look at what we talked about. Okay, I'm not playing. Ernest Holmes again writes, the entire problem of limitation, evil, suffering, and uncertainty is not God ordained, but is the result of ignorance. Ignorance of what? That the universe has our back and everything's going to turn out okay. And so when we're ignorant of that truth and we don't take the time to entertain that truth, when we don't take the time to experiment with that truth, if we don't take the time to just try it out, then we are going to live in this place of limitation, evil, and suffering. But it's only the result of not knowing. But now you know, and knowing's half the battle. And so then we affirmed in that week, okay, I'm not playing anymore. The suffering ends today. Today I choose to be happy. Today I live like I am worthy of all things because I am worthy of all things. How can we affirm that truth? We pulled out our phones, we took selfies, we looked at ourselves, and we said these words to ourselves. Why is that true? Because the universe has your back, and everything is going to turn out okay. In week 2, childish games, we looked at A Course in Miracles, the opening lines of A Course in Miracles that the entire text and workbook rest upon. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Why is that true? Because the universe has your back, and everything is going to turn out okay. And so then we talked about this idea, when we don't understand that, then we become defensive. When we don't understand that, then we start to attack. When we don't understand that, we set boundaries to not let people in. When we don't understand that, we believe in demons and spiritual vampires and other energies that can harm us. That's the only reason why that stuff exists, because of that old world view. See, here's the thing about the way life works. Whatever you believe, you must create in your life. So people think demons are real. Yes, the experience of it is real because we believe that life is something to fear. But as soon as you remove the belief in that, it's like the horror movies. I can't remember which one of them characters it was, but if you didn't believe that he existed, he couldn't exist. And maybe Freddy Krueger or one of them other ones. And but it's an ongoing theme. It's an ongoing premise within many of the horror movies. Your belief in it is what creates the nightmare. Your belief in it is what creates the horror story. Your belief in it is what creates the limitation, evil, and suffering. And so because this is true, these principles that we're resting on, then we know that defensiveness is weakness, but defenselessness is strength. Because when you know that everything is okay and the universe has your back, why would you defend anything? It's like you're just walking around life with this beautiful force field. What is there to fight? Who is there to cuss out? Lord, have mercy. In week 3, I receive what I give. We talked about healing our dysfunctional relationship with giving. Because we understand something. If we understand this truth that there's this field that we're thinking into and it's giving us back the vibration of our thoughts, not just the thought we're thinking, right? Because many times we hear this truth and it's like, okay, well, I want to think I am wealthy. And then we think money is just going to pour out of the sky like some spiritual ATM, right? Meanwhile, as you're thinking I want money or you're thinking I am wealthy, in truth, the fearful thoughts, the vibration of fear is there. Oh, well, I really don't have enough, or is this going to happen, or am I good enough, am I worthy enough, did I say it right, did I dot every I, did I cross every T? Well, I've never seen anybody with this much money. I don't even know what I would really do with all of this money. All of those thoughts, vibrationally, the emotion of it is what's really present, even as you're affirming that truth. And so here's what's interesting. When we understand I receive what I give, and this field is responding to us, when we give doubt, we get doubt. When we give worry, we receive worry. When we give lack and limitation, we get more of the same. So we got to be clear about what we're giving in the world, because we recognize that as we're giving, we're always receiving. Also, we talked about in that week that whatever it is that we're choosing to manifest, right? And this is what we're doing in Master Manifestor right now. We set a dollar amount. Doesn't matter what the amount is. $10,000, $100,000. The first question you need to ask yourself is, how am I willing to serve? There's no such thing as something for nothing. You have to exhale in order to inhale. Yes, yes. That's just the principle of life. So often we're in consciousness wanting to manifest. We want to inhale, but we have not exhaled yet. We have to be just as clear about what we're giving as we are about our receiving. I receive what I give. And finally, last week, how metaphysicians break the rules. And the 3 pieces that we talked about, that you must first start with God realization. And I gave you this idea that I use, wait a minute, I'm God. Now, not wait a minute, I'm God in the sense that you're the all that is, you're not. But you're created in its likeness and image. You're one with God, and as Ernest Holmes writes, one of God. And so it means that you're endowed with all of the same rights as your creator. You're endowed with all of the same abilities and possibilities and capabilities, infinite possibilities as your creator. And so if you understand that the universe has your back and everything works out for you, that things are always working out for me, as Abraham Hicks would say, then that's why you can even utter those words, wait a minute, I'm God, when you're about to go into fear. Wait a minute, I'm God, when you feel the doubt and the worry starting to creep up. Wait a minute, I'm God, when you're about to make a choice from limitation. And so because these principles are true, then what do we get to do? We can move on up, which is the realization of these principles. It's another way for us to move on up. Move on up into this non-physical space. Move on up into your mind in consciousness back to truth and say, wait a minute, the universe has my back and everything is going to turn out okay. Everybody wins. Everybody gets a happy ending. Use whatever phrase feels good for you, but understand the energy behind it. That I'm not lost. And this is why we almost sang this song today, You Win. And it's that idea, the book of your life isn't closed. Turn to your next miracle. You're just in a chapter in the story. Turn the page. Lord have mercy. And to ride this metaphor a little longer, now some of you might be saying, but Pastor Greg, this page is so heavy. Actually, Pastor Greg, I think my pages are glued together. And so this is why you use this principle. Wait, the universe has my back. Everything is working in my favor. Everything works out for me. That's what unsticks the pages. That's what then makes those pages lighter and you begin to turn the page. But you got to sit in that vibration long enough for you to actually move from the things aren't working out for me to maybe they are to they are. And you can move through that process very easily. This is why we're doing the work today. Because the work is one of the tools, one of the ways that you can move from that all is lost place to all is well place. And finally, in that third point last week, how a metaphysician breaks the rules, she understands the uncomfortable. And why does she understand the uncomfortable? It's because of these principles. The universe has our back and everything is going to turn out okay. The way I like to think about this is, when we go to a movie, we make an agreement, right? We sit in, we don't know what the story is, but we already walk in knowing that some way, somehow, everything is going to work out. And the joy of it is in knowing that I don't know how it's going to work out. Sometimes things seem crazy, things seem lost. There's just no way that things are going to be good. But we all have a genuine sense that things are going to work out. And so we're willing to take the ride. Yes, because we know that everything will come together, right? Everything will work out in the end. And so this is why when you're in the movies, you understand the uncomfortable. You're actually comfortable in the uncomfortable because you know where it's going. But why can't you do that in the movie of your own life? It's the very same thing. It's the very same thing. And as soon as we begin to use that principle and think of it that way, that's then when the answer can show up. That's when we open the door for not only an answer or a solution, but the right people in the right places showing up in the right time, or a phone call out of the blue, or an email out of the blue. All of that stuff starts to happen, but it can only happen in that moment, right? Out of the blue, thank you. In air quotes, out of the blue. Ain't no blue. It came out of your consciousness. But we recognize that then that's when we make the room, when we move into that place. And so I want to close with this. I'll expound on a couple of these, but there's a lot here. And I want you to, if you do not have the Own the Book, please go get it. Usually the ebook is always on sale. EQ'd by Pam Grout. That's my sister. We love her. We're still working on it. She's going to come to CSC. She wants to come to CSC, and we will definitely have her. But what she does after she kind of outlines more information about these two underlying principles, then she takes memes of Worldview 1.0, the old consensus, things that people say all the time, and then she affirms what the new consensus is. And I just want to share the new consensus because this is powerful. So the new consensus, as we're understanding now that we're in on the joke, right? We know what the inside joke is. I'm just wondering, because people still are messaging me about Sally Green. People are still messaging me about Sally Green, right? And I know, it's tough. You want to be in on the joke, right? We're in on this inside joke now. We know the truth. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to week 1. I talked about Sally Green. It's this game that I played as a child. Now, when we understand, now we're in on the joke. We have this new consensus. She outlines these 12 ideas. The new consensus, the new worldview says that there is nothing to fear. This is part of the new consensus. If you're ready, if you're in on the inside joke and you're ready to play the game of life and live and win and thrive, first you got to know there's nothing to fear. And this is rooted in everything that we just talked about. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. There is nothing to fear. The universe has my back, and everything works out for me. What do I have to be afraid of? This is the beauty of the psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Whom shall I fear? What in the world? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Are you serious? What in the world would I be afraid of when I understand what I'm connected to? The other one, number 2, life emanates from me. Now, you've heard me teach it this way. Life is not happening to you. Life is not happening for you. Life is happening through you. Now, each of these, they indicate an expansion of consciousness and understanding, because when we're in victim consciousness, we think everything is happening to us. One of the easiest ways that happens is when we say to our lovers or our partners, you made me feel ... Think life is happening to you. In truth, what happens is it's your thought and your meaning about what they did not do, said, or did not say that created the feeling tone in your own mind and your own body. And you have the ability to actually give it a different meaning, and then you will feel different based on what you thought and what you did. And so when we understand that life happens through us, then that's why we have to keep our mind on what is true. We have to keep our mind on those things that are of good report, that are positive, right? Number 3, joy is my natural state. And so this is then why the idea of following the joy and following your bliss is so important. It's saying follow your natural state. Anything else would be to live outside of who and what you really are. Number 4, God is a state of being, a loving energy that flows through me, sustains me, and surrounds me with light. God is not a person or a personality. God is spiritual substance. It's a being, an energy, and it flows through you. The activity that you are is God in form. It is God activated, but it also sustains you. That thing that keeps your heart pumping and keeps everything regulated while you're asleep, because you can't consciously do it, that's God in you. And then it surrounds you with light and with love. Number 5, my job is to create, not critique. Wow. If there's nothing to fear and the universe has your back, if everything is working out for you, what reason do you have to critique yourself, first of all? Because let's talk about that perfection piece, right, that we all do. But then we ain't got time to be in anybody else's business critiquing them, because my job is to create. This is the deeper teaching underneath. If we read in Genesis, in the first creation story, chapter 1, be fruitful and multiply. If we dig into some of the meaning of that, as I like to interpret it, go and be great. Go and multiply the goodness that you are. Go and take the gifts and the talents and the skills that you possess and multiply them by using them. Create, don't critique. Number 6, what I think, for the most part, is irrelevant. Now, this is interesting, right? For the most part. Now, we understand thought creates things. Yes, we understand that. But as I just talked about earlier, it's really the vibration of your thought. And so what we're thinking, for the most part, is irrelevant. We actually need to be clear about what's the feeling tone behind the thought, because that's what the universe is responding to. It's an energetic universe. Because just think about it for a second. If it was about what we were thinking, then that would have to do with language, because then it would be like, okay, well, can I think in English? Or do I need to think in Arabic? Or do I need to think in Spanish? Because I don't know if the field is going to respond to me. But because it's energy, it's responding to the energetic equivalent of what you're feeling or thinking. That's why it doesn't matter. Anybody all over the world, and people all over the world that are watching, they're hearing this message. They're getting the vibratory nature of this message. So what you think, for the most part, is irrelevant. But what you're vibrating is what's important. Number 7, there is no reason to struggle. If you haven't heard the message, go on YouTube, struggle no more. Go to another message, sacrifice is not an option. It's a 4-letter word, right? There's no reason to struggle. Human beings are the only beings on this planet that do that. I go back to this all the time, but this is why our elder brother Jesus taught the principle so clear in Matthew 6. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. What were the things that he talked about? He said, consider the lilies of the field. They neither toil nor spin, and yet they are dressed in more glory than even Solomon in all of his glory. In other words, if the flowers are beautiful and adorned, how much more will you be beautiful and adorned? He said, consider the birds of the air, the sparrows, which is where the beautiful gospel hymn comes from. His eye is on the sparrow, so I know he watches me. Consider the sparrow. Have y'all ever seen a bird struggle to find something to eat? You ever seen a stressed out bird? Lord, I don't know how I'm going to make it to the end of this month. And what's interesting, and here's the thing, because as funny as it is, and Pastor Yolanda and I, we love to watch nature shows, watching all the time. One of the things I love is how easily and effortlessly birds and other beings, they just go with the flow. Oh, there's no food here. All right, let's pack it up. Let's migrate. I was just sharing this story yesterday because I'm from Maryland and I love Maryland crabs and all that represents. Crabs are thriving now in Spain. Maryland crabs, blue crabs, which they're not indigenous to that area. They got tagged onto a boat and ended up there, and now they're thriving. And so now in Spain, they're like making paella with Maryland blue crabs, which is power. It's interesting, right? But you recognize that the blue crabs, just think about it. Think about if you were just up and just transplanted somewhere you ain't never been. It's like another planet for the most part. Think about how we as humans would freak out and, oh, I don't know this and I don't know that, and I'm in a different environment. The crabs, literally the crabs are thriving so much that the fishermen don't know what to do with crabs. They go out fishing and they're just pulling up crabs. So they're thriving. They're in a new environment which they were never designed to be in. And so we see nature doing that, and so we have the opportunity to do that as well. There's no reason to struggle. Number 8, I already have everything I could ever want or need. So this is powerful, right? Because we want to manifest things, and we want to attract things into our lives. But the thing about the way it works is that you actually have to get into the consciousness of already having it in order to have it. And so when we want something based on there's something missing in my life, when we want something based on there's something missing from me, or if I have this, then I'll be happy. If I have this, then I'll be complete. If I have this, then life will be perfect. We can't manifest it. But when we understand that I already possess the perfect love because I love myself, I already possess the perfect love because I'm in love with and in relationship with this field that responds to me easily and effortlessly and loves me unconditionally. Even when I've made mistakes, I realize that the sun still shines on me, which is a reflection of love. When I understand that and live in that vibration, it's easy and effortless to manifest a partner. When I live in the space and the place of having, of recognizing that I already have everything I need. I have the home that I need, and I love my home. I love my abode. I already have the money that I need, and I'm grateful and thankful for the ways in which I'm able to provide for myself and provide for others and serve others. That's then when more than enough shows up. I already have everything I could want or need. Number 9, the universe has my back and is constantly sending me blessings, gifts, signs, and guidance. You're in this relationship with this thing. It's responding to you through blessings, signs, gifts, and guidance. As we talked about in number 3, joy is my natural state. Number 10, the only thing I have to do is follow my joy. Now, that may sound absurd because your practical mind starts to go in, okay, Pastor Greg, but I still have to, work. I still got to go to the grocery store. I still got to do this, that, and the other. Pam Grout shares a wonderful story in EQ. I invite you, again, get the book. You'll read about a woman who really put that to the test. All I have to do is follow my joy. And what happened for her is first she was met with all of the thoughts she was really thinking, because life really got messy in the beginning as she was so-called following her joy. But as she began to clean that up and shift that, she began to live an absolutely miraculous life. Number 11, I can flip whatever I believe in any moment. This is what PY calls the spiritual bounce back. I can flip whatever I believe in any moment. Again, because what you're thinking is irrelevant. It's not real anyway. Whatever thought we're thinking, it's just a belief is just a thought you've been thinking. And so you can think a new thought, meaning you can create a new belief. So I can flip whatever I believe in any moment. That's important. Because, we may get to a point where we realize, oh, I was holding on to unforgiveness. And so from a past relationship or even unforgiveness toward a parent or a sibling. And that's why I keep creating this relationship with my coworkers or with my boss or whatever it may be. Okay, cool. Your awareness is there. Now what do you know to be true? I can flip whatever I think and believe in any moment. So let me use one of my tools, like the work. Let me use one of my tools, as we talked about in the previous weeks, radical forgiveness. Let me use one of my tools, meditation. And finally, number 12, which is a beautiful one. My worthiness is not at stake. Take a breath. This is the new consensus. Your worthiness is never at stake. Because if this thing has your back, and if everything works out for you, that would suggest that you're what? Worthy. So your worthiness is never at stake. Ever, 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 ever. So you can rest that belief, just get rid of it. Don't even rest it anywhere. Get it out your house. Right? We talked about last week moving on up, going to the penthouse of your mind. Don't take that to the penthouse. My worthiness is not at stake. So are you in agreement? Do we have a consensus here now on this point of view? We're in on the inside joke now. We get it. We know how it's played. We recognize that we may have lived according to the old worldview and the old consensus, but we've made a new agreement. We approve this new message, and we are in unison with it. We are unified with it. We are single-minded and singly focused on these truths. With that, I invite everybody to stand. And we take a deep breath in, and we exhale. Right here and right now, we forgive ourselves and we set ourselves free. We forgive ourselves for believing in the old consensus. We forgive ourselves for agreeing with the old consensus. That old consensus that said that we were being tested and punished by God. That old consensus that said that lack and limitation is what just is and how we're supposed to live. We forgive ourselves for believing in and agreeing with that old consensus that suffering was God ordained. We forgive ourselves and we set ourselves free for believing that we had to struggle and hustle and grind for good. We forgive ourselves. We set ourselves free for believing and thinking that anyone or anything outside of us had power over us. We forgive ourselves. We set ourselves free for thinking that we were the victims of life and the victims of circumstances. We forgive ourselves and set ourselves free for the ways in which we created boundaries to defend ourselves from so-called evils and defend ourselves from so-called demons and defend ourselves from spiritual vampires. We forgive ourselves. We set ourselves free. We recognize the truth that when we know better, we do better. And so we let go of the ignorance and we come back to our right mind. And I am so grateful and thankful to remember that your mind, Mother, Father, God, is our mind. Because there is one mind, one power, one presence, one life that is working in all, through all, and as all. That mind is my mind. That life is my life. That presence is the presence that I possess and that I stand in right here and right now. That truth is the same truth for me as it is for each and every person within the sound of my voice and any person that will hear this message at any point in time in history. And as we recognize that this is absolutely true, I recognize and remember that I am one with you and I am one of you. Created in your likeness and image, I am divine. I am perfect, whole, and complete. My sister, my brother, you are one with God and one of God. You are created in its likeness and image. You are perfect, whole, and complete. And there is a call within you that is saying, be fruitful and multiply. Be fruitful and multiply this holiness within you. Be fruitful and multiply this good that is dwelling within you. Be fruitful and multiply this love that is emanating through you. Be fruitful and multiply this light that is moving through you. Be fruitful and multiply this peace that is God in you. Be fruitful and multiply this ease that is God in you. Be fruitful and multiply this abundance that is God in you. Be fruitful and multiply this prosperity that is God prospering in, through, and as you. Be fruitful and multiply the God in you. And as we choose to be fruitful, as we choose to multiply the God, the good that is living, moving, and having its being in, through, and as we choose to activate this knowledge, as we choose to activate this consensus, right here and right now, I speak a word of blessing over your life. Right here and right now, I know that you are supported. I know that you are protected. I know that every answer is provided right here and right now. Whatever question you have, know this, hear this, my beloved. Any question that you have, the answer exists. So right here and right now, breathe in and breathe out and seek the answer within you. Right here and right now, I know that each and every one of you are winners. Right here and right now, I know that each and every one of you are victorious. Right here and right now, I know that the book of your life is not closed. Right here and right now, I know that you are an infinite being. So this situation, this problem, this challenge, this mountain that seems fixed, that makes it feel like it's over, the truth is you are an eternal being. So right here and right now, I invite you to call on the eternality of yourself and recognize that you are bigger than this problem. You are bigger than this circumstance, and the God within you will dissolve it. And so right here and right now, we allow ourselves to live according to these powerful truths. The universe, God, source, has our back. We all get a happy ending, and everything is working out for us, working in our favor. So with joy and celebration of these truths, I now release this word. I release it, and I release it back to the law, just as I would plant a seed in the ground and know that the sunshine and the rain and the wisdom and the knowledge of life itself will nurture and allow that seed to come forth easily and effortlessly. So I allow this word, so I allow this truth to come forth easily and effortlessly, and so I expect it to come. We do not dig the seed back up. We do not check on it every minute. We recognize the power and the possibility and the law that is always in work. So we let this seed be. And I know, just as every tree that exists on this planet was once a very tiny seed, so I know that the fruit of this word shall now grow into magnificent trees that will outlive us. And so with joy and thanksgiving, we lift up our voices and we say, amen, amen. Ashe. And so it is. So it is. Thank you, God.